So we've got the dynamic soil volume calculator. So one of the first things that I put out on Instagram when I first started posting about H.P.O was an equation that I'd kind of come up with to calculate how much soil to use under HID lamps in a room. And it was very basic, basically just taking the amount of plants you've got, the wattage you've got, and giving you a rough calculation on the amount of soil. It almost always overestimated things, and there wasn't really a way to factor other things into it. So not exactly what you would call a complete solution. So what we've done with this, and this took considerable time, is developed a coded logic system that incorporates a whole different bunch of data sets that we've collected from people, submitted. And we've built this, the dynamic soil volume calculator. So what it does, or what the intention of it is to try and help you go, okay, I want to do this in this size of space, and give you some recommendations on all of that sort of stuff. So you've got selections here for indoor, you've got selections here for outdoor, which changes the whole calculation of the form. But we'll start with indoor. So yeah, you go to indoor and you can select your plant type. So you'll notice there's a vegetative time here. Now, if you go and you select autoflower, it disappears. Why is that? Because you can't control the veg time of your auto plants. They just do it when they're going to do it. It does give you, though, the option to select from the two major groups of them. So your short flowering ones and your longer flowering ones. But just for now, we'll select photo period. We'll select medium because most people's cultivars are going to be in that range there, but you do have the option to select some shorties, or if you're nuts and you want to grow some haze, go right ahead. Now, changing these things updates calculations in the entire form. So everything is all interrelated. And it's all, like I said, based on real world data. So anyway, we'll come to here. We'll go a 4x4. Most people have a 4x4. Or a lot of people have a 4x4. A lot of those people have a 4x4 that is 2 meters tall. A lot of people are going to run a 5-week veg cycle. A lot of people might be running something around 480 watts in there. And they might want to run 4 plants. So then we hit calculate and we come down. And what it does here is gives you calculation results. So the overall volume for the amount of plants that you've selected is that. The adequate soil buffer size is that. That's what we're recommending. And your estimated grow days is 98 days. But anyway, we come down to here and you do have the ability to select either light or full spectrum. That will update the supplementation recommendations in here. And then you'll notice that there's like a red warning sign. You're like, whoa, what are you telling me what to do for, bro? Don't tell me what to do. But you've put 4 plants in there and you've got a 5-week veg period. And so for that size space, for a medium flower photo period plant with the amount of stretch potential they've got on a 5-week veg cycle, you'd want 3 or less in there. Or if you want to run 4, because you've got 4 varieties, come up to here and adjust your veg time. Let's say put it at 4. Come back down. Even still. So, all right, fine. We'll go with 2 plants. We'll keep our 4-week veg cycle. And then it's updated our total and brought it down our estimated grow days here too. So now it's happy. Look at this. We're at 150 centimeter plant height. So we're still got 50 centimeters to play with. So room for your carbon filter, room for your lamp, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got 2 plants. So we're not going to outgrow the space with all that. So we're all within range. Then you can come down to your supplementation. So what do we mean by buffer size? Well, just like with your internet, right? Because the nutrition for your plant in a soil grow comes from the soil. It doesn't come from outside sources predominantly like you would with, say, cocoa or NFT or anything like that. So that I refer to as your buffer size. So if you're trying to do too long a grow under too high a light intensity and all that sort of stuff, basically you're pushing too hard with too small a soil buffer, that's where so many people go wrong, because you're better off running, basically, the less maintenance you want to do, the more soil you should run. And so you'll see the difference between the small buffer size and the luxury buffer size isn't really that much. But if you look at the supplementation, we're suggesting, to keep up with the plant, higher doses of your herb superb and stone age, and that's based on your wattage that we calculated earlier and your space. Higher doses of your power boosters. And then why do we only have regular doses of the microbes? Surely you would want to go flat out with those, wouldn't you? Well, it's hard to go flat out with your microbes when you've got tiny space, because microbes are an organism. And so you've already got an organism in there that's taking up the majority of that pot, the plant, plus everything else that lives in the pot. And so if you just go sticking tons of microbes in there in kind of a more is more mentality, you actually run into a problem where oxygen, all those sort of things become competed for. So you kind of can go the opposite of the way you want to go. So we put regular doses to stick to the lower doses, but up the actual food sources and the things that are immediately available. In the adequate buffer size, low to medium, and then regular to max doses on your grow biotics, because you've got extra space to work with. And then if we come up to your luxury buffer size, I'm still recommending low doses if you're going to supplement with those, because a bit of fresh breakdown on top of the soil stimulates your soil wildly. But you don't need to use that much, because you're not really trying to supply a whole bunch of food. You're in a luxury buffer size. You're 20% over, so you've got room. Low doses of your power boosters, definitely going to be a good thing. You can, for instance, Green Supreme, reduce your stress from your room. Ocean Potion Aquamarine, provide a bit of fast release nutrition and all the stimulants that come along with those products. Because we've got our supplementation. Let's go up to here and we'll go auto flower. Right. We'll go short one. And then we've only got a small tent here. So let's go a 3x3, little shorty, and then we'll put 180 centimeters, and then we'll put 280 watts in there. And we'll click calculate. And so for a 60-day grow, about 20 liters of plant. It's still recommending smaller numbers though, just because of the diameter of the pot. And Grow Dirt Light is your selection for autos, because indoors for autos, that's what we recommend to people. It's giving you your ceiling height, so you're under your ceiling height there, you're fine, and then your supplementation. So still recommending stuff that's similar, but a little bit different. So lower doses for your autos, basically. Now, if you come to here and you select crop dressings and you hit BAM, brings down the total. And if you do it with power boosters, BAM, brings down the total. Why is that? Because while we would prefer people use the, basically, the buffer size that I use is that. But if you are intending on supplementing, you can get away with less. That's why those are in there. So it's like, okay, I have these things, I want to use them. How much soil can I save by using them? Now, and we will mess with some outdoor stuff. Bam. All right. We'll come back over here to photo period. Now you'll notice there's no selection there in outdoor for vegetative time length. Why? Because you can't really control that outside. They're going to do what they're going to do. But we've given you your flowering time, right? And that relates to this over here. So just give me a tick and we've got a 5 meter square space. That's the size of the patch. And then we're going to put the planting date. So that's today. And then we'll count 8 weeks from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll estimate our harvest date to be then 8th of the 3rd. And then we'll put 5. And then we'll hit calculate. Bam. All right. So for a photo period plant, growing for 8 weeks outside, you're going to want around 70 liters. And then you can actually select your blends from there if you want to see, and that will change your supplementation recommendations. It doesn't change too much between Gorilla Grow Dirt and Full Spectrum. They're quite comparable in terms of fertilizer load, but it does change for your light. All right. So then you can come up here and you can change it. Like you can go, all right, I'm running some, that's where I do me hazes, bro. I do them outside. So we'll go like that. And it's upped it. And it's giving you that. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. It hasn't, because we've got to update this here. So 9, 10, 11, 12. Long flowers. We're all the way off into April. Not quite May, not quite June. Yes, that's more like it. So it's recommending much bigger pots for your hazes. Big plants need big pots. All right, so the calculator obviously isn't going to factor every single little thing. It's impossible to do that. It is a guide. It's a much more comprehensive guide than we've been able to offer in the past. But it is still a guide, and so use your best judgment. All of this is basically so we can get to this, which relates to the next calculator that we're going to go to. Now we'll come over to the light calculator, to the PPFD calculator. All right, so now we've got our buffer size. We know roughly the amount of soil that we want to run. So let's get over to here and figure out how much light and a few other factors to try and sort of narrow things down a little bit. So crop years, that's your 10,000 hours. So if you're one crop in or it's your first crop, we're going to recommend that you don't push your plants as hard as someone who's been in it 10 years. And we've capped it at 10 because if you try and go to Methuselah mode and put in that you've been growing for 100 years, it's not that you're not going to learn much more after 10 years. It's just that, you know, we've got to put a cap in there somewhere. So we usually find that after people have grown 10,000 hours worth, they're getting pretty good at it. Right. So we'll put 10 because we're experienced, like Hendrix. And then you've got your selections for auto or photo period. Now, based on your phase, this will allow or disallow different selections. So for photo period, you've got superstarter, you've got light, and you've got full spectrum there in this current situation we've got going on here. And the reason that we've done that is because some people like to plant directly into light or directly into full spec. They don't actually transplant. And so you've got that option there. I'm going to select full, superstarter though, because that's what I prefer to use. Now we're going to come down here, and from the previous calculation, we're going to look at our buffer size. So we'll go buffer size, we'll go adequate. No need to go overboard with seedlings. And then we'll put that we're very consistent with the watering because we're attentive. Now we get down to VPD. So this is kind of, if you know what your VPD is because you're measuring it, you can just input the number there. It does give you recommendations. So when you change the phases, which we'll get to in a tick, it does change these recommendations down the bottom here. But you can also just go into here, and when you start changing these numbers, you'll see that it updates the form there. So it gives you, that calculates one range of VPD, that calculates another range of VPD, that gives you your results there, that gives you your recommended ranges, and that gives you your average. So you can see that we're actually like kind of outside range, and that's because the humidity is too low. So if we bump that humidity all the way up to 75, look at that, we're not far away from it now. And then if we bump up the night humidity, go another point on there, and bump that up to 70, we're now within range. Temperatures are probably a bit low at night there. 22, 25. All right. 1 point over. Good enough. But we can come in here and we can select climate control. And this will dynamically change your ranges slightly. And why that is if you have climate control, you have less swings. So yes, this is your average, But that doesn't necessarily account for the times where if you don't have climate control, your stuff just gets way out of alignment because you don't have the ability to control it. So if you have climate control, we give you extra points for that. You get points. If you've got CO2 enrichment, bam, you can whack it in there, and that changes your VPD ranges that are optimal because, as you'll see, the more CO2 you run, well, actually, you'll see that on the next one because we've capped it for seedlings. But it changes your ranges. You'll see that those interplay with each other. So you can kind of see like, okay, if I was running CO2, maybe I could get away with a higher temperature. That's usually what a lot of people find. Now, if you come down to your power boosters, you'll notice certain ones, namely in this phase, the aquamarine bloom is disallowed. That's because you wouldn't really be using it, or we wouldn't recommend you use aquamarine bloom on seedlings, but you can get away with a maintenance dose of the grow formula, or you can give them a maintenance dose of the ocean potion, or all good or mad doses of the green supreme, or all three if you want. But I'm not doing that right now. And then crop dressings, we've got none because seedlings really don't need them. And then you come down to your grow biotics. You got a micro dose, basically the lower doses of everything are available. So bam, giving us 365. And then we've got a par conversion there too, because most people don't actually have PPFD meters. They've got par meters because they're a hell of a lot cheaper. But let's go to here. So now let's go, all right, well, that's cool as a floor, but what happens if I want to run a bit of mojo? What does that do? Bam, I can run a bit more light. All right, what if I run a bit of antimatter? Bam, I can run a bit more light because those things are supporting the plant. Come up to here. What if I want to run an all good dose to offset a bit of the stress from being very consistent but not perfect? And the fact that we're only in an adequate buffer size, not a luxury buffer size, what'll that do for us? A little bit more. So you can kind of also go through and see what things will do based on different things. So even then, if we put CO2 and I go to like 1,000 parts and I come down to here and I click calculate, it'll cap it at 450 because even if you're doing all of that, you still don't want to run more than that for your seedlings. And then here's a cool thing. Check this out. If I don't change anything and I just come up and I go auto flower and then I go all the way down the bottom, there we go. So it's recommended a much lower level. So the photo period one was around 300 and something. It basically shaved 100 U-moles off the total. And that's because it's pretty widely accepted and our experience has been that autos just don't need quite as intense a light. All right, so that's your seedling phase. So then if you come through to, I mean, fast veg will give you, leave everything the same. It'll give you yet again another higher reading. So it's all calculated based on phase and based on the kind of plant you're growing. And we're still with autos too, by the way. So if we were to swap back to photo period and click it again, it's gone up again because there's a difference. So bloom stretch phase, this is, when the light levels and all the rest of it really start to get there. So now it's deselected aquamarine grow for us, and we have the opportunity to select aquamarine bloom. So we'll do that. And then it's deselected supergrass because it's not suitable for this phase. So we have the opportunity to choose balance or mega yield. What one will we pick? Well, let's go with mega yield, he thinks. Right. And then we'll calculate. Oh, high light level. But really, if you're to check, and this one, it actually gives you a bit more for using balance because balance is more appropriate for the stretch phase of flower. If we come up here and we change it to bulk phase of flower, change nothing else, leave it all where it is. Oh, we're really pushing the levels now. But if we come up here and we select it for mega yield, because now we're really getting into it, it's given us a bit more of a bump. And that is because mega yield is more appropriate. It's not that this one doesn't do anything, it's that this one is more appropriate for that phase. So this phase specificity, that's a good word, built in across the whole calculator. And then as we get to the ripening phase, leave that all the same, because that's what I would consider optimal for your ripening phase. And then it lowers it, because generally you want to drop your light levels a little bit in the last little bit of flower, so you're not like blasting things with too much light all the way up until the end. You select auto. Let's see what that'll give you. It's lowered it by a fair bit, hasn't it? And so that's kind of the point we're getting at here, is there is interplay between all of these different factors, and that all comes together to determine how good your grow is going to be.